Hello, you are listening to the All Girls School podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Barrett, a graduate from an all-women's college in Virginia. This podcast aims to highlight the diverse experiences and life journeys of graduates from all-women's colleges. Listeners can expect to hear candid conversations about a wide variety of topics. This podcast strives to be in an inclusive space, so some guests may identify themselves as non-binary or trans. I hope you're ready, because class is about to start. Hello, listeners. This is your host, Victoria Barrett. I just wanted to let you know that you are currently listening to episode 2, part 2 with Kat Narvaez. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, make sure you stop, go back and listen to part 1 before you jump into part 2 so that you'll understand where we're picking up. So let's go ahead and jump into episode 2, part 2. We were talking a little bit earlier about you getting involved in policy because, like you said, your fate is in the hands of the courts, but legislation can absolutely make a difference if Congress, can actually get things passed, get things done, because there are opportunities to help not only dreamers and DACA recipients, but also other people who are undocumented. We've known the system is broken for a long time, and yet there's been no action. I feel in my entire life, you can see there are debates, presidential debates going all the way back to the early 90s when I was born, where we acknowledge that the system is broken. And yet, I'm 32 years old and nothing has been done.
Yeah, I have been honored to be granted a platform to advocate not only for me, and when I advocate, I always advocate for the 11 million undocumented immigrants that live in the U.S., that call the U.S. their home. But every time I've given a interview or I've done a speech or I've talked in front of people, I've always have one or two people come to me and tell me, well, my family did it the right way. We had to wait 3 years and we waited, and and it's that's great, and I'm not gonna take that away from you. But it's this system and just politics in general pit people against people when it should be people against the system. Because while you only had to wait 3 years, if you look at the wait times for Mexicans or specific ethnic groups or groups in general, some of them have to wait up to 25, 30 years. And when you're in a town where it's, lack of opportunities, it's crime ridden, or are you going to just wait 25 years?
No.
And it's understanding that this system is fundamentally broken and it needs to be fixed. But somehow we are just a very reactive society and we don't tackle issues at the root. We kind of just always put Band-Aids on them, which is what I think DACA was. DACA was a Band-Aid. Instead of having legislative solutions, it was and this is why we are where we are now, where it's being battled in courts, where it's, deemed unconstitutional when, it had the potential to be a program that could help so many people. And, and I remember telling you this earlier. When I was younger, I saw a poster or I can't remember if it was a picture that said, imagine if the cure for a disease or a type of cancer was in the mind of somebody who couldn't get educated. And that to me has stuck in what drives my advocacy in trying to catalyze systemic change to ensure that a lot of people have access to healthcare, to education, to opportunities. Because imagine if we were a society where we empowered and invested in younger generations to be the change that they want to see, right? We would be so much further ahead. Instead, we're going backwards. Yep. And so it's this just having that be driving my advocacy.
Yeah, we're limiting our talent pool, and it's a shame. As far as listeners who are hearing your story, hearing about the fact that DACA, is in the fate of the courts, what kinds of things can listeners do to support DACA recipients?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people the best thing that you can do is educate yourself, right? I take the opportunity to listen and to learn because I want to be the type of person that whoever I have the privilege of serving, whether as a physician or just somebody down the street that I don't even know about, I want to give them the same dignity and respect that I would give anybody. And I think that starts with education, right? Taking the time to really learn and understand the issue. And that can be done through so many things, whether it's reading, listening to a podcast, listening to people's stories, kind of diving into how the system works, just gives you a better understanding. Second, if you have the capacity to donate, there's a lot of organizations that advocate for immigrant rights, freedom for immigrants. You have ACLU, you have CASA. There's an organization that I sit on the board. It's called El Refugio. There's just so many organizations that are doing great work to advocate for immigrants. And then there's policy, right? I think that the more, and I've always said this, whether it's health issues, whether it's social issues, social justice issues, environmental justice, whatever it is, some things can only be addressed by fundamentally changing the system. And that means that we need to use policies to catalyze change. And so, put your vote towards something that is going to systematically change the system so that you can, move the needle forward, whether that's, right now there's introduction of, I think it's called I can't remember the name of the bill right now. That is, advocating for undocumented immigrants and immigrants in general to have a pathway to citizenship. And it's stuff like that really, will move the needle forward. And I think it's just voting with intention, and, understanding that your vote is not just for you, it's for an entire community, for your community. And to look at people not for what they contribute. And I think, even when we look at people now, it's you're what can they do for me? Yep. Which is I guess, but it's inherently we are all humans. Yep. We are all deserving of opportunities, of working hard and seeing our dreams fulfilled. And how do we advocate for everybody, right? And I always say this, even though I grew up undocumented, even though I grew up in Title I, elementary, middle, and high school, even though I grew up with the shorter end of the stick, I am still very privileged, and I use my privilege and my platform to make sure that I am advocating for other people so that other people can also experience the same level of privilege or even more than I've been granted. And so, even though I can vote, I still do voter registrations. Yeah. The nonprofits that I was leading before, I co-launched another nonprofit where we would go out in the community, encourage people to vote, educate them on the process. Because I do believe that is one of the best ways to really change the system. And I think a lot of people are very disheartened. And I think it's because the system has failed them so much, right? So
you bring up a good point about not only voting and how important it is for people to register to vote and go out to vote, but also going past that, holding your representatives accountable and calling them and emailing them with what issues matter to you, so that you can create that momentum for change.
Yeah. And, I always encourage people to just get involved too, right? Or even, sometimes we think that you have to be the main person at the front of the line. And if that's you, great. My advocacy is being very vocal. Yeah. But I have a lot of friends who are also advocating in different ways, where they share stuff on social media of things that are happening, or they'll educate their family and friends who are close to them. And you're educating one mind, changing one heart at a time. And that in itself is very powerful, because then that person can go and educate somebody else. And that's how we become more aware in a more conscientious society.
Mhm. Yeah, very valid points. Uh, so you just are about to start your second year of medical school. So what inspired you to pursue becoming a doctor?
Yeah, so I grew up in a community that lacked a lot of resources. And, you know, like I told you, like I grew up not ever going to the doctor, where, you know, my mother feared navigating the healthcare system more than disease itself.
Hmm.
Not only was it costly, but the few encounters that we did have, people would say, oh, why don't you know any English? And as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old with my broken English, I would defend my mother.
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, do you work 3-4 jobs to sustain your family? You know, and just seeing that interaction with like providers, with people in my community, you know, I had the opportunity to shadow a physician in the community that I grew up in, and I like just starting to see a lot of this instances where providers didn't know how to provide adequate care to people from my community.
Mm-hmm.
They would say some comments like, what are you doing here? Like, if you're undocumented, and it just very, you know, very different interactions than when I would walk in. And people would actually get excited when I would walk in and I'd be like, I'm not a doctor, you know, like I'm just here to interpret or, you know. But there was this one instance that I remember very vividly. Well, a couple of them, but like this one, I remember there was a transgender person that came in, and the physician had the audacity, because like even and I was interpreting, and he asked, oh, well, do you still have a penis? Right. And in my head, I was like, and this person had come in for an STD, right? So your goal is to do no harm. And the moment like the people come in, even though you may think differently from them, even though it doesn't matter, at the end of the day, that is a patient and you have to treat them with dignity and respect. And I remember I didn't translate that. Like I didn't interpret that. All I said was like, I can't remember what I said, but it was something completely different. And then I ignored the doctor completely. But that person never came back.
Yeah.
He had to come back for treatment. Never came back. And I realized then, I was like, wow, like if I want, you know, I want to be able to provide that empathetic care to anybody that I have the privilege of serving, you know, and I think it starts with me like going to med school. Yeah. And you know, a lot of that was like, before I went to med school, I went to get my MPH MBA, and like even public health, the importance of public health, like preventing disease versus treating disease, is not always emphasized. And so, you know, I want to be the physician that works in the realm of like business, public health, and medicine, like understanding how the healthcare system works, understanding how policies in like population health, and having that intimate understanding of that patient interaction, and how I can use the intersection of all of that to be able to, you know, catalyze change within the healthcare system, to ensure that more people have access to healthcare, to ensure that we're impacting population health and increasing positive health outcomes, because you know, the healthcare system, the way that it's set up now, if you can pay for it, great. If you can't, oh well, right? It's like, and I'm a firm believer that healthcare is a right, should be a right. But as it stands now, it's a privilege that not everybody else has, that not everybody has. And so it's like, how do we change that? And just been driven by this desire to, you know, ensure that people in my community have access to healthcare, ensuring that we're improving population health, because a lot of diseases can be prevented if people only knew. Yeah. And a lot of that, going back, requires policy change.
You mentioned kind of like, I want to talk about representation and kind of you wanting to change things by getting in the medical field. And you're at Emory right now, right? And like I said, I professionally stalk you. And I saw someone told you not to like share where you were from Buford Highway.
Yeah. So my first, I had this mentor, a Black orthopedic surgeon, and when I told, like, I was really excited. I was like, oh, I grew up on Buford Highway, which is literally like 15 minutes away from Emory, like Emory Grady. And she was like, oh, I wouldn't tell people that you grew up on Buford Highway. I would tell them that you grew up in Chambly because that's an up and coming area. And I remember, like, I was so shocked. One, because I was like, this is supposed to be the person that is supposed to be empowering me. Mm-hmm. And looking back, it's like, now I understand maybe she went through something similar. Maybe people looked at her differently because she grew up maybe in an underserved community. But I've always been very, very, very proud of where I am from, whether it's Guatemala or Buford Highway. But I remember a day later, one of my patients that I was seeing was from Buford Highway. Mm-hmm. And I sat with her, and I was the only person that could talk to her directly. We talked literally tamales, Peso Pluma, which is like up and coming Mexican artist. Yeah. Just everything. In the fact that this lady, when she was leaving, she had stage 4 cancer, breast cancer. And, she was like missing her family back home and stuff like that. And when she was leaving, she tells me, can I give you a hug? And I was like, oh, okay, sure. And so she gave me a hug and she thanked me. Mm-hmm. She thanked me. She's like, thank you for being with me in this moment. She said that in Spanish. Gracias por mija. We say mija, like my daughter. Mm-hmm. It kind of like translate to that. Thank you for being here for me in this moment. And to me, that was like so important. And it was I always call them full circle moments, because here I was told to hide a part of me that is so fundamental to like my growth and where I come from, to seeing how it positively impacts somebody's experience, and realizing that that's where I'm needed. Mm-hmm. And even though I am told to change who I am, or I always tell people, like, I like hoop earrings and red lipstick because I feel empowered. I feel like I'm, in Spanish we say chingona, which is badass. And constantly being told that, like, oh, you can't wear red lipstick because that's unprofessional, or you can't wear hoop earrings because that's what hookers wear, or like strippers and stuff like that. And it's like trying to change that paradigm and that dynamic that, in order for me to fit into this system, I have to change myself. And I think you said it earlier. You're like, the difference between belonging and fitting in. And I don't seek to fit in. Mm-hmm. I seek to belong. And, I remember telling you, like, I'm, at school, like, they had to take my picture. And I show up with, like, red lipstick and, like, a bright blue, with little hoop earrings. And I was told, oh, we normally like neutral colors. And I was like, yeah, if I go back home and change, I'm not coming back. You want a diversity? Well, here it is. And it's like understanding that, I am, and it took me a while to be here because I would always conform to the system. And I've been warned to not ruffle any feathers, to just kind of go with the flow, and that I can change the system when I get to a point of power. And I'm like, so what? Like, I'm supposed to just wait for, like, for the system. And I think that's why we are where we are, because people are just so afraid to stand up for themselves and to advocate, and to, it's okay if you ruffle a little feathers. And I remember telling you this earlier too, where it's like, it got to the point where I have to send my friends my emails before I send them out, because I have been labeled as aggressive, and I've been labeled as disrespectful. And I think there's a huge difference between that and being stern, and advocating, and being and be able to stand your ground when you think that there's an injustice happening. And, now just being very extra careful to make sure that when I'm interacting with anybody, that I am being the most respectful as possible. And I don't think that, that is a reflection of me. But I think people are just not used to a powerful like strong-minded person standing their ground because everybody's just okay with like going with the flow. Yeah. And that is just not me. And that is okay. Yeah. Like I have understood that if it means that I'll get in trouble here and there, as long as we're moving the needle forward.
Yeah. No change happens without ruffling feathers and, you know, making people a little uncomfortable, making them look inward and like actually reflecting, oh yeah, like that is a problem. So let's fix it. Let's change it.
Yeah. And you know, in the medical field, it's very, like you're supposed to just look down and do what you have to do in order to get through. So, you know, I get why I've been told, even by my peers, Kat, stop. When somebody calls me, oh, you're very sophisticated, and questioning that, or when somebody tells me, you speak very good English, and I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, you're actually really smart. What do you mean by that? Am I not supposed to be smart? And the thing is, like, experiencing all of these things constantly has made me hypervigilant to them. And I always learn to respond to that by asking rhetorical questions like, what do you mean by that? Because then it forces you to really think, why did I say that? You know, what about this person makes them look sophisticated? What about, you know, what they said means that they're actually smart, right? And the thing is, in a lot of the groups that I'm in, nobody else gets those comments, but I do. And it's like, just, yeah, like, and people are like, just take it as compliments, just accept it. And I'm like, no, I will not just accept it, because those are backhanded compliments if you want me to take them by that, right? But just being like very critical about the rooms that I enter and like being my authentic self. And I don't think that a lot of rooms that I enter are ready for that, which is okay. And it has caused me to get in trouble a couple of times. But I am not willing to change myself to conform to their expectations. And I always say this to myself, and I pray that I stay committed to my values, that I stay authentic, and that I never lose this spark for advocacy and equity, because this system really does break you down. And I want to make sure that I'm recharging and that I am taking care of myself so that I can continue fighting it.
Speaking of recharging and taking care of yourself, obviously you're very busy. You've got a lot going on, like with medical school, things like that. How do you take care of yourself? How do you try to stay balanced? Because, you know, staying balanced, can anyone truly be completely balanced?
I think, I always say this, and it's like motivation takes you halfway there, right? But motivation always fades. It's transient. It like comes and goes. Discipline, make it a lifestyle. So I am a very disciplined person. You know, I work out consistently. Like, it's funny because I always tell people that I'm a mediocre med student because my schedule, I get up early, go to the gym, come home, I work, I eat my breakfast, and then like I find time to work, I find time to study. By 6 o'clock, done. Whether I got stuff done, whether I didn't, done. And that's my time to relax. I'm reading a book, I'm watching Netflix, I'm watching something else, I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, whether it's advocacy, hanging out with friends. And it's like, it's this idea that, you know, people just want to conform to, like, for example, like in med school, most of my friends study till 1, 2 in the morning. I don't do that. One, I'm old. Like, I am older. Like, I don't think I can hang anymore. But, you know, they're eating pizza like every 5 times a week. I want to be that physician, and I think I learned this in VWO. You lead by example. Yeah. How can I expect my patients to take care of themselves, to eat healthy, to sleep well, to work out, when I don't do it myself? I'm supposed to be the leader. I'm supposed to be leading by example, right? And I cannot expect my patients to want to live a healthy lifestyle if I cannot do that myself.
Yeah.
And I commit to that.
Mm-hmm.
I, really taking the time. Working out is already a part of my schedule. I don't have to wonder what time I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, or if I'm going to do it. It's already set.
Mm-hmm.
Eating healthy is already a part of my schedule. I don't have to wonder, oh my God, what am I going to eat today? Those things are already incorporated because a healthy body, a healthy mind
Mm-hmm.
gives me the power to push through all these things. And so I commit to that. And, I think you have to be very adamant and acknowledge, right, that I don't, and I think, if your goal is to get 99% of the questions right, great.
Yeah.
I'd rather be a very well-rounded person,
Mm-hmm.
very well-rounded physician, because I want to be able to inspire my patients.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing 99% of the information is like not as important as making sure that they understand that I'm listening, that I understand where they're coming from, that I'm going to do everything in my power to get, because the thing is, it's practically, as physicians or people in general, it's practically impossible to learn everything.
Yeah.
Right. But, I see it now, even at the hospital. I'm on the oncology department, and there's people who are 40 years old who are walking around with oxygen tanks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And there was this one patient who, like, oh my gosh, it just struck me where his prognosis wasn't good. And the thing is, his body couldn't handle chemotherapy because he had all these other comorbidities, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, like just, and it just, his body wasn't going to take it, wasn't going to be able to take it. And so he literally said, I wish that I would have done more when I was younger. And to me, I'm like, I'm going about it the right way.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, you know what? I prioritize my health, my mental sanity, over getting 100% on my test, or like doing all these things, and another thing is, I only do things that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about advocacy. So that's why, I'm with Senator Gillibrand. I'm passionate about like public health. So like teaching public health. I'm passionate about mentorship. So, so doing things that I love, I don't think of it as a chore. And I think a lot of the times people do things to make themselves look good, as like on a resume or like, and so then you're dragging at that point. And so, I'm a very spiritual person as well. Like I go to church. Just like really trying to live the life that I want, it being as healthy as possible so that I am able to, cause havoc in the system.
Yeah. And I think that like contributes to your man, I just lost the word. I had it. Credibility. That's the word. I was like, man, I just had it. It was on the tip of my tongue as a doctor. Like you said, leading by example.
You learned that in the military.
Yeah.
You learned that. I'm sure, you were an officer in the military,
Yeah.
And I always said, like, I never expected, like, even through BWO, I never wore core frames. Like, I always shined my shoes because I always expected people in my platoon and under me to shine their shoes. And how can I expect them to do that when I can't even do it myself?
Yeah.
Oh, you need to pass your PFT? How can I expect them to pass their physical fitness test when I can't even do it myself?
Yeah.
So it's like always leading from the front and never from the back.
Like it makes me think of my mom. She used to talk about her doctor all the time. And, she was like, yeah, I talk to him about you all the time because y'all have similar interests. Like he likes to run, like he's very health conscious and stuff like that. And for my mom, like it was important for her to know that like her doctor was taking care of himself. So that gave credibility when he was saying, okay, like you need to make some of these changes. And yeah, it just gave that credibility. Like he's leading by example through all of those things. So yeah, I think that's really cool. And I 100% agree about like the physical fitness, like taking care of your body. Like I think a lot of people think about like the what's the word? Like the materialistic parts of staying healthy and staying fit. But, you know, when I think about aging, I don't want to be, I've seen like my grandparents, like they've all passed away, and like they all had these ailments, and like their quality of life when they were older was it wasn't good.
Yeah, and we always hear this. People are always like, "Oh, I'm here for a good time, not for a long time." And it's like, yes, and I hate when people say that, because like even like I hear it a lot of the community like that, that I grew up in. They're like, "Oh, de algo nos vamos a morir. We're gonna die of something," and you're right.
Yeah.
We're all gonna die. But it's like, do you want to be 40 years old carrying around an oxygen tank because you have been actively smoking your entire life, because you've never taken time to go on a walk or work out, or you've never taken that extra step to, I'm gonna try to eat vegetables today. And the thing is, like, I want to also acknowledge that there's systemic barriers, right? Like that people live in food deserts or areas that don't have fresh fruits or green spaces, like where they can't go outside and go on a walk, or when you have to pay, deciding whether you want to pay for your bills or actually eat healthier food, because the way that our society is set up, it's more expensive to buy a salad than it is to buy a $1 burger, in McDonald's or whatever. And so it's like you understanding that there's all these systemic barriers, but then also, taking that extra step. And I always, like, people are always asking me, like, how do you do this? Take the stairs. Like, you're going 2 flights of stairs. Like, instead of taking the elevator, take the stairs. You know what? Like, and I say this all to the patients that I would see. I'll be like, you know what? I know we like tacos. I love tacos. Like, I will eat my tacos, and nobody will ever tell me anything. But instead of eating 5, you know what? Let's do 3. Yeah. Instead of like you're drinking soda like every day. Well, you know what? I understand you like it. Why don't we do twice a week? Yeah, moderation. Yeah, and it's like a lot of people don't understand that. And it's just like those little quick lifestyle changes can have a drastic impact. And you said it. It's about aging. You wanna live a long life, but you also want to live a life where you're able to bathe yourself and take care of yourself when you're in your 70s, that you want to be able to pick up your grandkids, that you want to be able to drive and all of these things. And so it's like, how do you do that now instead of waiting till you get to the point where like you can't do anything anymore? Because like, in scientific studies have shown that working out stimulates your brain. So like it reduces the onset of of Alzheimer's and dementia. You're having a strong heart, reducing diabetes and preventing like high blood pressure and cholesterol, and all of those things helps your body. You know what I mean? So it's like, just go that extra step, to make sure that you're like taking care of yourself. Yeah. I'm trying to be that lady in those TikToks that's like 80 years old running around that track. And people are like, look at this 80-year-old. Yeah, like that's my goal. Yeah. And like that should honestly be, and I tell myself that all the time, I want to have kids eventually, but I'm going to be a little older when I have kids. But I also want to be fit to the point where like, if my kids want to go around and play soccer, I can do that. And that means that I need to put in effort now, and I think society, America in general, is very, like driven by like, you have to be doing something. Like, and taking a rest is not seen as like a good thing. Like, you're just being lazy. You're just, and understanding that it's okay to not always be productive. It's okay to take time for yourself. It's okay to go to the gym. It's okay to like do all of these other things. And I don't think we rest enough as a society, because we're always go. Yeah. And just, like learning to balance that. Like, and I'm going to be honest, like I wasn't always like that. I was that person before, where I was consistently, but I tell people now, like this past 2 years, I have lived more than I did an entire decade of my life, when I started realizing the importance of taking care of myself, taking care of my mental sanity, taking care of my body, and just having this shift in my mind that, you know, I can still be this badass person and pursue all my dreams and goals, but not at the expense of my health.
That's awesome. Okay, so I do have some, like, to kind of close out, I do have some fun, like, kind of rapid fire, like, either or things. So, like,
Ooh.
yeah. So I'm going to give you 2 options and you have to choose which one you prefer, like, off of the top of your head. So, like, you know, maybe like a second or 2 to think about it and then you have to answer.
Okay.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Oh, cats, for sure.
Summer or winter?
Oh, summer.
Love or friendship?
Friendship.
Introverted or extroverted?
Ooh, extroverted.
Cautious or bold? I think you might have answered this.
Bold, for sure.
Hot coffee or iced coffee?
I think it depends on the occasion, but probably cold.
Okay.
Or iced.
If you had to choose, would you rather see the future or change the past?
I would say see the future, because then you can prepare and plan and be proactive, not reactive.
Nice. Cardio or weightlifting?
Oh, weightlifting. Although cardio is yeah, it's just as important.
Yeah. Well, I think weightlifting from like a female perspective, like we get told that like that's not something we should do. Like, I know, sorry, this is like a tangent, but like I'm trying to like change my mindset around like strength training because I never wanted to like get too bulky, but that's kind of just naturally how my body is. So like I'm trying to like run with it. Like,
yeah. And I think the fitness industry has created a very unrealistic expectation of what the body should look like. And we're all very, very different. And, you know, I recently became certified as a personal trainer, not because I want to, you know, have all these clients and stuff like that, but because I wanted to understand how I can develop a program to ensure that I'm maximizing health benefits, but also just for women. Yeah. Because I think, you know, you look at fitness industry, like fitness influencers, and you see them like toned and like with a 6-pack, and that is very unrealistic. For most women, we are literally badasses, like working, going to school, literally trying to balance so many things that it's very unrealistic to think that we'll achieve that. But doing something for your body, God, like it's just, you're extending your life, your quality of life, you're doing something for your health. And I think that that's more important. And I wish, you know, like I wish that a lot, and I hope that more women understand that like going to the gym and lifting weights, like it's one, so empowering, but 2 is like, it's okay. And honestly, we don't produce as much testosterone as men do, like unfortunately, because if we did, we'd be building a lot of muscle. But you know, men are able to build muscle really quickly because of the testosterone that they make. We don't make that much. So like, you know, like the for us to be bulky like would require some extra stuff.
Okay, couple more. Singing in the shower or singing in the car?
In the car, yeah, for sure. Especially those long rides.
Carpool karaoke. Okay, last one. Get a tattoo or get a piercing?
I don't have any tattoos, although I've been thinking about it. So I'm going to say piercing.
Okay. I would say tattoo because I have like 5. Okay. So this last part is just like an opportunity for you. It's called like plugging or plugs, where you get to kind of like let us know, listeners, where they can find you, maybe on the internet, or things or projects you have going on that maybe they can look forward to.
So you know, I actually haven't told this to anybody, but I've been working on a book with like a publishing company. So hopefully, you know, I haven't decided when exactly I want to release that. Maybe I want to do that when I graduate medical school. I do a lot of op-eds. But like social media, working on that, I feel like, you know, I've told you this before. I think that people are multifaceted, so I'm working on like just revamping that side of my you know, because I do a lot of stuff. I do a lot of interviews, I do presentations, I'm like traveling, I do research, I'm pursuing medicine. And so I think I need to maybe localize that in one area and hopefully, be able to show everybody how like multifaceted people can be.
Okay. So stand by, listeners. As soon as she drops that information, you can find it on the Instagram page for the All Girls School podcast. We'll make sure we share that. All right. Well, I mean, honestly, I don't know how much time has gone by, but like, I feel like I could keep talking. I'm kind of sad that I ran out of questions, but this has been amazing. And it's been like such a great conversation. And I've really enjoyed it. And I hope that you've enjoyed being on the podcast as well.
No, thank you so much for having me. And I feel so honored that I'm like one of your first few ones. And, I wish you the best of luck. And I think this platform is like very important, especially because I think that the now and the future is female. Mm-hmm. We always say, oh, the future is female. Like, no, right now, like females, like, we have so much potential, and I think we just need to be given that platform and that opportunity to be great. And I think that by sharing a lot of these, not only resources but also like badass women that in your inner circle, can empower and motivate other people to kind of just pursue their dreams and their goals and to be able to make change.
Yeah, that's exciting. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening to the All Girls School podcast. But before class is over, please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review on Apple or Spotify podcasts. If you enjoy video content, head over to our YouTube channel at All Girls School Podcast, where you can watch and listen to each episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at All Girls School Podcast, and you can email us questions, stories, and more at theallgirlsschoolpodcast@gmail.com. That's it for today. Class is dismissed.